Hi, I'm Jennifer.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Andrea.
And we're not saints.
We're not saints.
But we're learning from them. And welcome to season 3. Okay, first, before we begin, I have to apologize. We got back to Indiana and the allergies have attacked. So if I sound a little nasally or have to leave to go blow my nose, that is the reason. Good old allergy season.
And I always sound nasally, so join the club.
That's a Kanachi thing.
Yeah.
Before we begin, I just want to remind everybody, because what I think is so fabulous, and I hope I'm speaking for all of us, but you guys chime in whenever you want, is that as we've been studying the saints, actually, I've been getting closer to God for sure. But I just want to talk a little bit about saints and the Catholic faith. And this is just my interpretation, my understanding. I could be totally wrong, but I just want to clarify that we do not pray to the saints. And I've heard that so many times when people say, but you pray to saints. I'm like, well, I really don't. I'm asking the saints to come in and intercess for me, to ask Jesus, just like I would say to you, Andrea, do you mind praying for me? I'm having a really bad day. Why can't I call in a saint and say, hey, can you pray for me too? Right? Because the one thing we know about saints is what? They love Jesus like no other, right? What they went through in Jesus' name has been powerful, right? So why wouldn't I call on them to help me when I'm sadness, right? Or fear? And the saint we're talking about today, Saint Dymphna, who you guys are probably going to have to correct me all day because I just couldn't capture the Dymphna. Someone even said to me, think of nymph, like Dymphna. So Dymphna. Okay, that just worked there.
Or lymph node. The lymph.
But going back to a novena, the Latin is 9. So it's a prayer you say 9 days in a row. And, it's not magic. It's not superstitious. It's just a continued prayer that reminds us to stay on task with what we're praying for, right? Anyway, I think there's something beautiful about novenas. I think there's something beautiful about learning about the saints and about sharing what we know and asking them for help when we need it, So we're not walking through suffering alone. But just remember, Jesus is who we talk to and who we pray to, right? And God. So anyway, now I'm going to sneeze.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Cover your glasses.
Well, and speaking of staying on task, so we're talking about Saint Dymphna today, but also you're saying you had something about novenas that you wanted to cover?
Well, I just said that we prayed them for 9 days, but people can also pray to Dymphna and 9 days to her for mental anxiety, for depression.
Yeah, I think her point was that as Catholics, we don't believe that a saint replaces Jesus. We believe that we can pray to a saint to help us connect to Jesus.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not
ask a saint to intercede for us.
Right.
We're
not I think the part that rubs people is like when we say praying to Saint so-and-so, and then we say, well, we don't pray to the saint. So it gets confusing at times, but when you're completing a novena, you're asking that saint to intercede for you for that particular cause.
And will you bring my heart to Jesus?
Yeah, and I think it's a great way to kick off season 3 as we're deepening our faith and trying to understand more what all of these different facets of Catholicism mean for us and how to explain them best to others, and then also understanding what other people might confuse about the Catholic faith or about their own faith. What does it mean for us to kind of communicate?
And what we want to be saints. Father Stephen reminds us of that weekly.
People that were pagans, even back then, they had false gods, is what we refer to them as. A lot of times they had things that were related to the devil that they might consider God. And that's why they did sacrifices with animals and even humans. I mean, they sacrificed to their God that they was the God.
Right. And what does it all mean? What's the meaning of that? Sometimes I think when we start to understand people by what the intention was behind something or the meaning for them about what they're doing, it helps us to understand each other a lot better and to not villainize or demonize people as much. And I think it's especially crucial in this story that touches on mental health.
Exactly. And that's it. She died a very young death.
Saint Dymphna.
And I'm going to leave the history to Mike and Andrea. I'm just going to talk about her as the patron saint of anxiety, mental and emotional suffering,
You know,
those suffering with mental addictions.
Addiction is part of the mental health issue.
Right. And it's so human. It was human back then with her story, which we'll talk about. And now we still, it's mental health is an issue that's talked about daily, right? And
I read recently that 1 out of 6 young people have a mental health issue. 1 out of 6. And now suicide is the second leading cause of death between people from 10 to 35.
Wow.
The second leading death. So that's a lot of suicides due to mental health. So that's why we wanted to talk about mental health issues.
Exactly.
Saint Dymphna was born in the 7th century to... Her father was a pagan king in Ireland. And at the time in Ireland, the way I understand it, there was a lot of different, like, small groups of people that had their own kings. And they had a lot of battles over property. They fought all the time. There was a lot of turmoil during that time. But he was a pagan, and he married, his wife was a Christian.
Strong Christian.
Very strong Christian. And when he found her and married her, he was totally obsessed with her. I think he had mental problems from the beginning.
Right.
From what I read.
You can't make that assumption.
No. But and then when Dymphna was young, I think she was 14 when her mom passed away of an unexpected illness. And her father was just totally devastated by this happening because he was obsessed with his wife.
And he loved her.
He loved her. She was an absolutely beautiful woman. And he instructed his kingdom to find him a new bride, but she has to be as beautiful as my wife that is bad.
Had to look like the wife.
And he wanted her to look like her.
And he wanted her to be a noble descent and chaste and look an image of his wife who had passed. Yeah.
So in searching, they could not find anybody as beautiful as she had been. So then one of his people suggested that he just marry his daughter because she apparently looked just like her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was appalled by the thought.
The daughter was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so after he kept pursuing it, she kept saying, no, we're not doing that. She ended up running away. She went with a priest. They escaped with some of the other servants of the kingdom.
And at this point, too, I was thinking this was going to be a different story. I was like, are we going to get a little love story here? But no, it did not end up that way.
So they ended up sailing to Belgium, and she started a group there to help people with mental health. And she'd taken some coins from Ireland and were using them as money to help the people and build a church. And that's how her father found her. He sent spies out, and they found somebody in Belgium spending Irish money, and they said,
But I also thought it was it showed her true colors because she was using the money to build a hospital for the poor and for the sick. She was using it for a good cause. It wasn't like she had fled and she was footing the bill for all the priests and the servants' meals or anything. She was trying to care for other people who were struggling.
Yes.
Exactly.
And that's what she's doing from heaven, too.
Yeah. And then once the king discovered where she was, he went there with some of his soldiers, and they immediately killed the priest that
took his head off.
That went with her.
Yeah.
And then he started in with Dymphna about, I want you to return. You're going to be my wife, blah, blah. And she said, no, I will not do it. And he pulled out his sword and cut her head off.
Yeah, and also at this point in the story too, so there's two things that I'm like, that made me think. First of all, how King Damon, how he could be mad and acting erratically, and how people tend to sweep that under the rug when it's somebody in power. And we see this a lot of times with even just celebrities. When they're doing messed up stuff, they have to sweep it under the rug because it's bad for the brand, or it's bad, like, what's this going to unravel for us? And that choice harms so many more people. And while it might be a financial hit, or in this case, a hit to the kingdom, for people to discover that their king is totally off the charts crazy. It's going to be so much more damaging, the damage that he does when his mental illness goes unchecked and when he refuses to kind of face the facts. The second thing, what's up with head chopping when you're mad? Like, why are all these mad kings and queens? Why is like the thing they go to the head? Well, I looked into that
My gosh.
and it has something to do. So you have it with Caligula, you've had it with Ivan the Terrible, you've had it in history multiple times, especially back in the day when it was almost like putting the heads on a stake. Well, it was propaganda. It was like, "Don't
Yeah.
mess with me. This is what will happen to you." But also, whenever you're experiencing these erratic mental breaks and things like that, a lot of them were reportedly very paranoid, and they didn't want somebody else coming after their power. And when you sever the head from the body, it's also a symbol of taking away the essence of that being. It's more than killing, it's totally wiping that person out and removing them from existence and removing their knowledge and their personality and everything from their body. So I had to dig into that because I
Oh
was
my
like, why is this a theme over all of these crazy kings and queens?
Yeah.
And other powerful people too. I mean, there's stuff in pop culture even today where some, singers are committing murders and they're on trial for it. And it's like, why is this happening? Why do we sweep these mental illnesses under the rug? Anyway, and why does it always lead to the head going off? Why
Yeah.
are we dismembering bodies? Do we need to do that? Is killing not enough?
Yes.
Sorry, that was my little rant. So he found her in Geel in Ireland,
Let me
from
back,
Ireland to Geel.
Andrea, that I wanted to put in there. During this 7th century period, it wasn't that uncommon for especially kings to pretty much have their way with women. They could go out, you could just take a woman off the street and say, "You're my wife." And there was a lot of incest was not really frowned upon. It was
Right.
so common during that period, which in our society, it's like, what?
But I think the layer for her, for Saint Dymphna, she had taken a vow of chastity at
Right.
14. She was deeply religious. So there were other, I think,
These people were
factors.
pagans. They weren't Christians, so they didn't believe in the Christians. They didn't believe in marriage so much. I mean, you could have multiple wives at that time.
Yeah, the pagans were very different.
Yeah. So that was his beliefs were fairly common because Christianity wasn't really that strong yet.
Yeah. But I mean, even after he offed her and the priest, her life after that just kind of blossomed.
Yeah.
The good that she was able to do afterward because of how she cared for the poor and the sick when she was alive, that legacy carried on in the town of Geel.
Still does today.
And it still does today. And she received the crown of martyrdom in 620, and she became known as the Lily of Air. And then later on, in 1349, that church was built that honored her, and as I was saying, that legacy that carried on after her death swept through the town. So by 1480, many people and pilgrims were coming to the church to be cured of these mental illnesses, and the people of Geel started accepting them into their homes, didn't turn them away, they were feeding them, and it became known in Geel that if you come there, you'll be cared for. You won't be shunned by society like it would have probably been back in those days. But I thought that was really powerful, and that is what the king needed. That's the kind of care that the king needed when he was grieving.
Yes, his grief turned him. And there's anxiety, there's depression, there's so many layers to mental illness, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think of it like the mad kings and the mad queens before, chopping and saying, all types of crazy demands. But there's other layers. There's like the hidden mental illnesses too.
Like you had said, there's a lot of different types of mental illness, even starvation and overeating and everything that you do, and then alcoholism and drug addictions and
grief.
Depression. And
exactly.
There's all different aspects. So for 1 out of 6 of people have some sort of depression. I mean, that's
right.
And you think about your own life. I mean, it's people I can think of that I'm not going to mention names, but I mean, I know people that have issues with some sort of addiction or depression. We all do.
And I think it starts with that mental block or that mental illness of, oh,
I'm okay with it. I get depressed. It's all good.
no, depression, I feel like, is most common, and anxiety nowadays. I think we're fed
Mhm.
so much information
Yeah.
now than we ever experienced in our lifetime. I feel like I always talk about it. Every season I have talked about this. We need to get rid of our phones. I think we need to go off the grid. But,
True,
like,
'cause a lot more pressures in the world today than there was.
well, you're constantly reachable, you're constantly being marketed to or fed information, whether you wanna know it or not.
Mhm.
This is what's happening in Washington, DC, and this is what's happening in New York, and this is what's happening
Mhm.
overseas. You know so much information, and we only have so much bandwidth that when you're overly notified and you're overly advertised to and you're overly told what's right and what's wrong and what's normal, what's abnormal, and this is the trend that you need to follow. It
Exactly.
I think maybe mental illness is more prevalent and prominent today, but also it just wasn't recognized as a thing, in these early days, like when Saint
Mhm.
Dymphna was alive.
And,
But
to go back to Saint Dymphna, and
Mhm.
even back then, what was she showing? Compassion.
Yeah,
What is the little town of Gil showing? Compassion. If we can all show compassion for one
yeah,
another, which again, we're not closing yet, but I think compassion is what's so important. And I think it's what St. Dymphna teaches us,
right.
and what
Yeah,
at young age, she died at 15, correct? I think
she
she was,
did.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
she was
Yeah,
young. Um,
yeah.
so did you find any Bible verses?
I did, but before I say the Bible verse, I would like to talk about where you can find Saint Dymphna's shrine in America. There's another shrine in
Mhm.
Geel, but in America there's also the National Shrine at St. Mary's in Massillon, Ohio. I think it would be great to visit some of these places that are in America, especially with our American saints too. I know they have places that we can kind of get closer to them and learn more about their stories. But Saint Dymphna is also, I just think, a really great example of how to treat people and how she walked the same walk as Jesus did and not turning people away. And we have to remember that when it comes to people who are struggling with something that's invisible to the eye, when it's happening in your head. And that there's should be different avenues for that, and I think we're getting better as a society. It's not across the board. The whole world doesn't think the way that Americans do about mental wellness, and even Americans have a long way to go. But being well up here, I think, will hopefully solve other problems so that people don't feel the need to turn to addictions or other ways of self-harm that they might turn to when their mental illness goes untreated. But one of the other things that I looked up about Saint Dymphna, and based on some comments that we've received on YouTube, other videos so far, when some people are asking, well, why is this saint portrayed holding this particular object? Or why are they painted in this color? So I looked into Saint Dymphna's portrayal, and she's often portrayed with a crown holding a sword. Now, we already learned, I don't know if we've talked about it on our episodes, but usually whatever the saint is holding might be a nod to how they died. So she's holding a sword because that was the way that she was martyred. And then she's portrayed with a crown, which seems to be a nod to her royal lineage, but also sometimes the martyred saints have a crown representing the crown of eternal life.
Right.
I don't know if that would be the case with her since she was the daughter of a king. And she's also holding a book in certain portrayals that could allude to her wisdom, the Christian truth, the gospel, the lamp that represents the light and darkness. And I love the portrayal of the lamp being the light in psychological darkness as well. She was guiding the way for people who were struggling. And then you have the white lilies, which of course are purity, which would be a nod to her
Mhm.
chastity. And the green and white colors, white again would be purity, and then green is said to be healing, hope, and renewal. However, I've also heard purple being the color of hope,
Hmm.
but it's also the color of royalty. So I'm not positive on the colors part, but I think I have good reason to believe the other ones with the book, the lamp, the lilies and the sword, as well as the crown.
I saw all that too. The only one I remember is they said sometimes they had demons at her feet.
Oh, yeah, you said that.
Yeah. So,
Which would make sense.
yeah, I looked at a lot of different pictorials, and some of them did have demons,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Yeah, we
not,
gotta.
I think a lot of the iconic statues, some of them have demons.
So I do have a Bible verse that's reminiscent of Saint Dymphna, and it's from Psalm 34:18. The Lord is near the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. And I know we've probably heard this before, but it's really important to remember that.
It is.
Yeah, just staying close to God, especially in those times of darkness, because 9 times out of 10, He's put you there so that you come to Him, become closer, or take time for yourself to reflect on what's brought you here. Now, when it comes to people struggling with mental illness, they might not automatically turn to the Lord, just like somebody without mental illness wouldn't automatically turn to the Lord in those times of darkness. But we can ask Saint Dymphna to intercede for those people, and we can ask them if they want to come to church with us or say a prayer for them yourself. And it's really important to remember that.
Because it's a very serious issue that some people want to sweep under the rug, but it exists. Depression is real. Anxiety is real. That evil voice, I have another word that talks in your head that constantly contradicts what you want to be in heart. And,
It's so fun to watch us try to clean up our language for the show. We're not saints, guys. We are people too that struggle to be clean.
Exactly.
In language.
Exactly.
You want me to go beep and say it?
No, I'm not saying it. But we have that little committee in our head that sometimes just tells us things that aren't true, but we fall into it, right? So I think wherever you are today, all of you out there watching, if you're struggling or if you know someone who's struggling, call on St. Dymphna. Do a novena. You don't have to be Catholic to do a novena. You can look it up on what's that thing Alex told us how to use? The thing that you talk to your phone or to Safari and say, hey, what is a
GPT?
novena?
You talking about GPT?
Something like that. Anyway, but you can ask them to show you the prayer and you can say it. It's so easy. It's so beautiful. And it's just, I always feel that when we do a novena for someone else, I just believe in them. I believe in prayer. I believe in the constant prayer. And St. Dymphna reminds all of you out there that healing can begin with compassion. I think that's what she taught us. Number 1, presence. She walked. The whole town walks with the people when they come in and they're depressed, right?
Right.
And prayer and hope, because all of us can do it.
I agree.
Yeah. And maybe one of the holiest things we can do for one another is just stay there when that person is suffering, right?
Absolutely.
So I hope today, as I said, the history, there's not a lot about our beautiful saint, but what she's done and continues to do in our world today is really powerful. So thanks for joining us. And please, we love the comments. We are going to work on saints that you guys have mentioned. So keep writing, keep texting, and thank you.
And before we go, I think somebody has a new book out that would actually help with this compassion that we're searching for. Jen?
I just finished my 3rd book, When Vice Happens, and it deals a lot with compassion and how important it is for all of us, right? If we all practiced it. Anyway, you can get it on Amazon and text me. I can mail you one. Thanks.
At We're Not Saints 1, which is on our Instagram. You can message us on there. But it's also vice. We all have our vices. And sometimes we turn to those vices when we're feeling the most low. So I do think that this is a perfect book to wrap up this episode today, to talk about, what we're all struggling with, and maybe not right this minute. It might be something that you've struggled with in the past, or you might be getting ready to face something in the future. But I'm really excited for the 3rd book, Jen.
Thank you. I'm embarrassed with things. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of We're Not Saints. For more of the We're Not Saints shenanigans and behind-the-scenes content, you can follow us on Instagram at We're Not Saints 1. That's We're Not Saints 1, without the apostrophe. And be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. We'd also love to hear from you. So leave us a comment or a review, or contact us by email at we'renotsaints1@gmail.com.
And if you'd like to have a great companion to your weekly saint studies with us, you can purchase a copy of my books. Are You There, Mary? How to Resurrect in Love After Loss, or Finding Love in the Confessional on Amazon, available as a Kindle version or paperback.
All these links will be provided in the description of this episode. And don't forget to tune in next Wednesday for our weekly dose of saints. God bless you.
Should you read it again with more intonation?
No.
It was very Mike.